How do societies balance the philosophical, social, and economic foundations surrounding education? What do government policies prioritize, and what implications do these political ideologies have on educational outcomes? Hello, and welcome to the mini course titled Global and Comparative Education, sponsored by the UC Santa Barbara Orfila Center for Global and International Studies. My name is Travis, and I'm a PhD candidate in education and research fellow at the Orfila Center. My research focuses on education policy, policy implementation, and program evaluation. This week, the mini course will cover the global politics of education. We will focus on the political economy of global issues in education and methodologies used to compare the international economies of inputs and outcomes of education. The articles in this section consider issues of political ideology, advocacy, and student activism. These concepts frame the politics of education globally by highlighting the connection between ideology and outcomes in educational contexts. The politics of education involves focusing on students as political actors, participating and interacting with elements of the political economy. These concepts have implications for the way we might prioritize or implement practices to oppress certain group outcomes. Considering the implications of political ideologies on education, how do government priorities and global conditions affect educational policies and implementation? How do these policies affect student outcomes? Social, political, and economic conditions shape the realities of surrounding educational institutions and the associated individual level outcomes. These politicized social realities of individual conditions shape school curriculum, student access to resources and knowledge, as well as students' agency and political participation. Readings in this section consider how external factors shape ideas of the practicality and importance of education and their associated outcomes. Moreover, scholars such as Paulo Freire describe the conflict between the role of education as a key mechanism for the freedom from oppression and the development of self-awareness, practices which can be analyzed from elementary school and literacy research, which we'll talk about in a couple of weeks. How do these different international ideologies historically affect education policy settings? What role do public, state, or federal agencies play in shaping educational policies and student outcomes internationally? What role do researchers play and policymakers from these external agencies in advocating for student success? Scholarship on education advocacy acknowledges the role of external agencies in shaping the organization and implementation of education policy. Education advocacy highlights the actions and opinions of activist groups focused on improving educational outcomes. These groups are often discussed as political in nature, but are a foundational component of the education policy system. If external agencies can affect the internal organization of education policy, how do actors within education institutions organize in response to these shifting economic and political conditions? Student agency and political participation or activism describe the behaviors of students in which they express their own beliefs and identities within their respective institutions and within the larger political system. However, educational research finds that students often experience feelings of oppression within their institutions, particularly the case of Brazilian higher education during the 1970s. As students begin to respond to shifting political pressures and exacerbated economic conditions, institutions of higher education and students begin to organize almost in opposition to each other. How do these patterns of organization reflect institutional norms or other existing societal structures? In the next video, we'll cover new institutionalism in education. You can access the syllabus and research articles on my website. Here you will also find an active forum for weekly topic discussion. Are you interested in learning more about global and comparative education? Click the links next to this video to learn more about course objectives, activities, and requirements. Follow me and the UC Santa Barbara Orfalea Center for more information about upcoming sponsored events related to global and comparative education. Thank you and see you next week.